Ava Brooks stepped out of the taxi and smoothed her dress, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. The air was warm, filled with the faint scent of jasmine drifting from the gardens. Ahead, the Botanical Gardens sparkled with strings of golden lights, tables draped in white linen, and clusters of laughing guests in bright evening wear. It was her mother's 30th wedding anniversary celebration, and even though she had not been officially invited, she had told herself she had every right to be. She was her mother's daughter. She held a small silver gift bag in one hand, the ribbon handle cutting slightly into her palm. It wasn't expensive, but she had chosen it carefully, a framed photo from years ago, before everything between them had gone cold. She had only taken 3 steps toward the main entrance when a tall, broad security guard stepped into her path. His expression was blank, but his voice was firm. "Evening, ma'am. This is a private event. Can I see your invitation?" Ava blinked, startled. "I'm not on the list, but I'm family. My mother is the one being honored tonight." The guard glanced at a clipboard in his hand and shook his head. "Your name's not here. Sorry, I can't let you in." Heat rushed to Ava's face. "I'm her daughter," she repeated, her voice sharper now. "Ava Brooks. I'm telling you, I belong here." The guard didn't move. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside." She could feel eyes on her. Several guests, just arriving, had slowed down to watch. Someone's phone was raised at an angle that told her they were filming. She gripped the gift bag tighter, her throat dry. Just as she was about to turn away, a familiar voice slid into the moment like a blade. Well, look who decided to show up anyway." Ava turned. Clara was standing there in a long glittering gown, her hair swept into an elegant knot, diamonds flashing at her. She looked every inch the perfect daughter of a wealthy family. Clara's smile was small and cold. "You were told not to come," she said, loudly enough for the people nearby to hear. The guard stepped back slightly, sensing the personal nature of the confrontation. Ava's stomach twisted, but she held Clara's gaze. For a long moment, neither moved. The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses from inside the garden seemed far away. Ava could feel the old, familiar wall between herself and this family, tall, cold, and unshakable. Finally, she turned away, the humiliation burning through her. Behind her, Clara's voice floated after her like smoke. "Some people just don't know when they're not wanted." Ava didn't look back, but the sting of those words followed her all the way down the path. Ava's earliest memories were of a warm, busy home. Her father, Michael Brooks, worked long hours but always made time for her. He would come home smelling faintly of aftershave and paper, scoop her into his arms, and ask about her day as if nothing else mattered. Her mother, Vivian, kept the house running with quiet determination, making sure Ava had home-cooked meals, clean uniforms, and help with homework. Life was modest but comfortable, and Ava never doubted she was loved. That changed when she was 14. Her father's sudden death, a heart attack on a rainy Tuesday, shattered their world. The house became quiet, heavy. Vivian cried for weeks, but by the 6th month, her sadness seemed to have shifted into something else, determination to move on. Ava tried to keep up with school, tried to be helpful, but she felt like a ghost in her own home. Barely a year later, Vivian introduced Richard. He was older, confident, and wealthy, with a deep voice and a sharp smile. They married quickly, and Ava found herself in a new house in a gated estate, bigger, shinier, and colder than anything she'd known. From the start, Richard was polite in front of others but distant when it was just the two of them. He asked about her grades but never listened to the answers. His attention was for Vivian, and later for Clara, the daughter they had together. Clara was born into a life of endless birthday parties, private tutors, and designer dresses. Ava watched her mother pour energy and affection into her new family, while Ava herself faded further into the background. By the time she turned 18, Ava had learned to stop asking for help. She worked part-time at a cafe through university, paying her own tuition and rent. Vivian attended Clara's school plays and music recitals, but always seemed too busy when Ava had something important. They spoke mostly about practical matters, never the deep things that still hurt. Now, at 28, Ava lived alone in a small apartment with thin walls and mismatched furniture. She was a junior lawyer at a small but respectable firm. The work was steady, though the pay barely covered her bills. Recently, she had been assigned a case involving an inheritance dispute, a woman fighting her late father's second wife for a share of the estate. Listening to the woman's story in the cramped meeting room, Ava had felt a sharp, personal ache. It was too close to her own history. When she saw the photos online, her mother in a flowing silver gown, standing next to Richard under the headline, "Celebrating 30 Years of Love," something inside her twisted. The post had come from a distant cousin she hadn't spoken to in years. The caption mentioned the anniversary party at the Botanical Gardens, a beautiful private gathering with family and friends. Family. The word burned. There had been no phone call, no card, no invitation. Ava had scrolled through the pictures again and again, each one a reminder of where she stood in their world, on the outside looking in. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to be there. Not to celebrate, but to face them. To remind them that she existed, that she was still part of this family no matter how hard they tried to erase her. When she arrived at the gardens with her small gift bag, she had told herself it was about making peace. But deep down, she knew it was also about something else. The years of exclusion, the silences, the way they had built a perfect picture without her. She had come for more than just a party. She had come to confront the life they had decided she didn't belong to. Ava walked away from the Botanical Gardens with her head down, the gift bag still in her hand. The warm night air felt heavy, pressing against her skin. Her heels clicked on the pavement, but inside she felt small and invisible. She didn't take a taxi right away. Instead, she kept walking, trying to push away the image of Clara's smug smile and the security guard's blank stare. By the time she got home, her dress felt too tight and her makeup like a mask she wanted to peel off. She set the gift bag on the kitchen counter and collapsed onto her couch, staring at the wall. The silence in her apartment was sharp. She almost ignored the sound when her laptop pinged with a new email. It was late, and she didn't recognize the sender, just a string of numbers and letters, no name. For a moment, she considered deleting it, but something made her click. The subject line was short, "For you." Her eyes scanned the message. There was no greeting, no explanation, only one sentence. "They never wanted you to know." Beneath it was a single attachment, a PDF file. Her heart began to beat faster. She opened the file and froze. It was a scanned legal document, old and slightly faded. At the top was the title, Last Will and Testament of Michael Brooks. She recognized her father's name instantly. She scrolled down, reading carefully, each word tightening the knot in her stomach. The will stated clearly that she, Ava Brooks, was to be the sole beneficiary of a property he had owned in Victoria Island. It described the location in detail, the size of the land, and its estimated value at the time. He had left it to her alone, with no mention of Vivian or anyone else. Ava sat back, her hands trembling. That property had been sold years ago. She remembered hearing about it in passing, Richard telling someone over dinner that they had liquidated assets after the marriage. No one had ever asked her. No one had told her the truth. If the will was real, and it looked real, it meant her mother and Richard had taken something that belonged to her. And not just something small. That land, in today's market, would be worth a fortune. She read the short message in the email again. They never wanted you to know. Her mind spun with questions. Who had sent this? Why now? How had they gotten hold of such a document? She looked at the time, almost midnight, but she couldn't bring herself to close the laptop. She read the will again and again until the words blurred. A part of her wanted to confront Vivian right away, to call and demand an explanation. But another part of her, the part that had learned to survive in silence, told her to wait. If this was true, if her mother had knowingly hidden this from her, it meant there were deeper lies buried under years of polite smiles and cold shoulders. She shut the laptop and sat in the dark, the city's distant noise drifting through the window. The humiliation from earlier in the night was still there, but now it was joined by something sharper, anger, and a need to know everything. Ava made herself a promise right then. She wouldn't storm in without proof. She would investigate quietly. She would dig until she found every piece of the truth, even if it meant uncovering the darkest parts of her family's past. And when she had it all, they wouldn't be able to pretend she didn't exist anymore. 2 days after receiving the email, Ava took the morning off work and went to the local land registry. The building was old and smelled faintly of dust and paper, the walls lined with shelves of worn files. She stood in line, her fingers tapping nervously on her bag strap. When it was her turn, she handed the clerk the property details from her father's will. The man typed for a few minutes, then disappeared into a back room. Ava waited, her heart beating faster with each passing second. He returned with a thin folder and slid it across the counter. "This is the file for the property," he said. Ava opened it and scanned the pages. The sale had taken place just 7 months after Vivian's marriage to Richard. The buyer was listed as a company she didn't recognize, but a quick glance at the signatures told her something was wrong. Her name was nowhere. The signature under seller was Vivian. Next to it, in a neat scrawl, was Richard's. The sale price was far below the property's market value, even back then. There was no mention of her, no indication she had been consulted. She closed the folder and thanked the clerk, though her voice sounded far away to her own ear. By the time she stepped outside, her hands were shaking. That evening, she called her mother. No answer. She sent a text. Nothing. She tried again the next day. Still nothing. On the third day, she received a message, but not from Vivian. It was Clara. "Drop it before you regret it." Ava stared at the screen, her jaw tightening. Clara had always been good at getting under her skin, but this was different. This felt like a warning. The next morning at the office, she went to see Mr. Jameson, her mentor. He was a tall man with graying hair and a calm, steady presence. She closed the door behind her and laid the printed will and property records on his desk. He read them slowly, his eyes narrowing. If this will is valid, and if you were not informed about the sale, there could be grounds for a serious legal claim, he said. But they'll deny everything, Ava replied. And Richard has connections. I don't even know where to start. Jameson leaned back in his chair. Start by keeping this quiet. Gather more proof before you make a move. And Ava, be careful. Cases like this can get messy, especially when family is involved. That weekend, she finally got her mother to agree to dinner. They met at a quiet restaurant, one of those upscale places where the waiters barely spoke above a whisper. Vivian arrived late, her hair perfectly styled, her perfume filling the air before she even sat down. They ordered food neither of them touched. Ava took a breath and placed the printed will on the table. Why didn't you tell me about this? She asked. Vivian's eyes flicked to the paper, then back to Ava. Where did you get that? It doesn't matter. What matters is that Dad left me that property, and you sold it without telling me. Vivian's voice was smooth but cold. You were a child. Richard handled everything legally. There's nothing for you to dredge up now. That's not true, Ava said, her own voice rising. You signed the sale papers. You knew exactly what you were doing. Her mother's lips pressed into a thin line. Ava, you are being ungrateful. Richard has given you a better life than your father ever could have. You should be thanking him, not accusing us. Ava's chest tightened. A better life? You mean the years you ignored me? The times you made sure I knew I wasn't part of your new family? Vivian's hand reached for her wine glass, but Ava noticed it tremble slightly before it steadied. I'm not discussing this any further, she said. If you want to ruin relationships over money, that's on you. The conversation ended there. They sat in silence until the plates were cleared. Vivian left first, not even glancing back. Over the next week, the quiet isolation began. An aunt who used to call every few months suddenly stopped answering. A cousin left Ava's message on read. The family group chat, which she was never active in, now buzzed with photos of the anniversary party, Clara front and center, Vivian glowing beside Richard. It was clear they were closing ranks, pushing her out even more than before. But instead of backing down, Ava felt her resolve harden. They could ignore her, they could pretend she didn't exist, but she had the will, she had the property records, and now she had a reason to dig deeper than ever. She was done letting them write her out of the story. This time, she would write her own ending. Ava had been following every lead she could find when the break finally came. It happened one afternoon, when she received another anonymous email. This one had no attachment, just a single line. If you want the truth, meet me at the cafe on Olimo Street. Tomorrow, 4 p.m. The next day, she arrived early. The cafe was nearly empty, the hum of a coffee machine filling the air. A man in his late 40s walked in and scanned the room before spotting her. He wore a faded shirt and carried a worn leather bag. You're Ava Brooks, he said, sliding into the seat across from her. I'm David. I used to work for Richard. Her heart skipped. You sent the will? He nodded. I was his personal assistant for years. I knew everything that went on in that house. They fired me and called me a thief, but I never took a thing. The real theft was theirs. He leaned forward. I was there when your father's will was found. Richard told your mother to keep it quiet. He said the property was too valuable to waste on a child. I have proof. From his bag, David took out a small recorder and pressed play. Richard's voice filled the air, low but clear. She doesn't need to know about it. We'll sell it, put the money where it's useful. Ava will understand when she's older. Then Vivian's voice. And if she asks? Richard again. We'll tell her it was handled legally. She'll have no way to check. Ava felt her stomach twist as she listened. Hearing their voices, calm, casual, made it all real in a way documents never could. I kept this for years, David said quietly. I didn't plan to get involved, but I think it's time someone put them in their place. That night, Ava made a decision. She wouldn't confront them in private. She wanted witnesses. She wanted them exposed. The opportunity came a week later at a charity dinner hosted by one of Richard's business associates. She knew they would be there, along with many of their wealthy friends. She put on a simple black dress and carried her phone in her hand, the audio file ready. The ballroom was grand, filled with soft music and the clinking of glasses. Richard stood near the stage, shaking hands and smiling for photos. Vivian was close by, chatting with a group of women in sequin dresses. Ava walked straight toward them. Conversations slowed as people noticed her. Richard's smile faltered. What are you doing here? He asked, his voice low. I'm here to tell the truth, Ava said. She tapped her phone, and the recording began to play through the small but clear speaker. Richard's voice cut through the room. She doesn't need to know about it. We'll sell it, put the money where it's useful. Gasps spread across the crowd. Vivian froze, her wine glass halfway to her lips. The recording continued, every word sharp in the sudden silence. When it ended, Ava looked around. That was my father's will they were talking about. He left me a property. They sold it and kept the money. Richard's face reddened. This is nonsense. That recording is fake. David, who had been standing near the back, stepped forward. It's real. I was there. I heard it myself. Whispers turned into murmurs, and several people pulled out their phone. Richard's business partner was already backing away from him. Vivian's mask finally cracked. Her voice was sharp, her words spilling out like venom. You always did think the world owed you something. You were never satisfied, never grateful for what we gave you. Clara is the one who deserved our support, not you. Ava stared at her. Support? You cut me out of my own father's legacy. You lied to me for years. You think you're special because you have a piece of paper? Vivian shot back. That property was ours to do with as we pleased. You were just a child. The room was completely silent now, every eye on them. Richard tried to pull Vivian away, but she jerked her arm free, glaring at Ava with open resentment. Ava didn't move. I was his daughter. That was enough. She turned and walked out, the hum of whispers and the click of cameras following her. Behind her, she knew the perfect image of Richard and Vivian was already starting to crumble. And this time they couldn't hide it. Ava didn't waste time after the charity dinner. The next morning, she met with Mr. Jameson and handed him the recording, the will, and the property documents. He listened carefully, his expression unreadable, then nodded. We can build a strong case for restitution, he said. It won't be quick, but with this evidence, they'll have a hard time defending themselves. Filing the case was like opening a floodgate. News of the confrontation at the dinner had already spread, and reporters started asking questions about Richard's business deal. His polished public image began to crack. One by one, his partners distanced themselves. Invitations to high society events stopped arriving. Vivian, once the picture of social grace, now found her calls going unanswered. Friends who used to linger at her side avoided her at public gatherings. The gossip was relentless, not just about the stolen property, but about the way she had treated her own daughter. Clara sent Ava one last message. You've ruined everything. Don't ever speak to me again. Ava stared at it for a long moment before deleting it. The words stung, they always would, but there was also a strange lightness in letting go. Months passed as the legal process moved forward. There were depositions, tense meetings, and attempts by Richard's lawyers to discredit her. But each time the evidence held. The will was genuine. The recording was clear. The sale had been shady from the start. When the settlement finally came, it wasn't the full market value of the property, but it was enough. Enough to pay off her debts, enough to move into a bright, airy apartment with tall windows that let the sunlight pour in every morning. Enough to give her the kind of security she had never known. She left the law firm and started her own small consultancy, focusing on inheritance and property disputes. Her first clients were people who, like her, had been cut out of what was rightfully. Each case reminded her why she had fought so hard. On quiet evenings, she would sit by the window, the city lights glittering below, and think about everything that had happened. There was still sadness for what she had lost. Not just the property, but the family she had once wished to belong to. Yet there was also pride. She had faced them. She had won something back. And most importantly, she had built a life that no one could take away from her again. 6 months later, the air was warm again, carrying the scent of flowers and fresh-cut grass. Ava walked up the familiar path to the Botanical Gardens, her steps steady and calm. This time, she wasn't here for someone else's celebration. She had been invited as a guest speaker for a community legal awareness event, to talk about inheritance rights and how to protect them. When she reached the main gate, she saw a different security guard than the one who had stopped her. He gave her a friendly smile and a small wave. Good evening, ma'am. Welcome. Ava smiled back and walked through without hesitation. No questions, no clipboard, no one looking at her like she didn't belong. The gardens were just as beautiful as she remembered, the paths lined with glowing lanterns, the flowers in full bloom. She paused for a moment to take it in, the air cool against her skin. A few people recognized her from the case and came over to greet her, thanking her for speaking up and helping others. She listened, nodded, and shared warm words in return. It felt different this time, not like she was pushing against a wall, but like she was moving freely through a space that was hers to enjoy. As she walked toward the event hall, she glanced back at the gate in the distance. The memory of that night, the humiliation, the cold dismissal, was still there, but it no longer had power over her. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past lift. I came here once as someone unwanted, she thought. Today, I leave knowing I belong, everywhere I choose. Make it for the above story in just 70 words. Hey besties, thanks so much for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, drop a comment, and of course, subscribe for more gurs. See Ryu in the next. Her friends invited Ebu could everyone except her to their girls' trip. She booked one seat beside. Her friends invited everyone except her to their girls' trip. She booked one seat beside. Bye.